he went for a sail with Captain Nat on a yacht named Clara that Captain Nat had built for himself in 1886. And he was so very impressed by the Clara that he then wanted to have a Harrasov yacht, and he was the owner of the Gloriana.
Gloriana belonged to a class of sailboats designed specifically for racing called 46-footers. Captain Nat broke all established rules of design and construction when he built the Gloriana.
She was the first yacht of any prominence to have a cutaway bow profile for low-wetted surface. She had an elegant form and a beautifully formed keel, and she had many new techniques of construction for lightweight.
Spartan was built 21 years after Gloriana, but through her, we can learn of Captain Nat's revolutionary techniques for building strong, lightweight hulls.
In boats of this design, the mast is generally pretty far forward. The mast, of course, is what heels the boat over when it's sailing. The lead ballast is comparatively further aft, and that's what keeps the boat from heeling over too much when you're sailing. So these offset forces tend to twist the hull. Now, hulls like this have a lot of wood going this way transversely. They have a lot of wood going fore and aft. But when you twist something, you put diagonal stresses in it.
Dealing effectively with these diagonal stresses is a large part of what allowed the Harrasovs to build boats light.
In other boats, they used big, heavy timbers, heavily caulked, inside ceiling that was heavy and heavily caulked to try to get enough friction between the planks to prevent the boat from distorting when it got twisted by the rig. In this boat, the boat was built with those stresses dealt with directly.
Captain Nat was the first designer to incorporate diagonal metal straps set into the planking to prevent the hull from distorting. Besides Gloriana's lightweight hull, the Harrasov's first racing yacht also incorporated an advanced sail design.
She was the first boat to ever have another one of Captain Nat's innovations, cross-cut sails. Now, those are sails where the fabric is arranged so that the cross threads of the fabric are aligned with the stresses of the sail along the leach. It's amazing that in 1891, Captain Nat was able to introduce so many pioneering innovations into a single yacht. And the result was that in this new class of so-called 46-footers of the New York Yacht Club, there were 8 races, and the Gloriana won every race. She never lost a race.
Dear Louis, our brother Nat, whom we have always believed to be the ablest designer of the whole lot, and who has for 19 years been the field, is finally asked to frat the whole yachting world. He shapes out new lines and perfects many engineering novelties, and we soon behold the Gloriana as a representation of his skill. Soon the battle hour arises, the yachting world turns their eyes to Bristol and stand in respect.
From that day when the Gloriana came out and was recognized as being such a breakthrough, and from her great racing successes, all the good contracts for yachts came to the Harrasovs, and it enabled them to then start this run of several decades where more prizes were won by Captain Nat's yachts during those next decades than by all the other yacht designers combined.
A blind mathematician and trading virtuoso, running a 300-plus employee company, a design and engineering genius exploring cutting-edge technologies and materials. John and Nat's was a unique partnership that was about to take the world by storm. No doubt what turned the Harrasovs' name into a household word was their 8 defenses of the America's Cup. At the turn of the century, the public's interest in the races for the Cup was very keen. Newspapers and magazines detailed all aspects of the event.
We have pictures of crowds standing in front of the Providence Journal newspaper office here in Rhode Island, wherein bulletins were being posted every so often as to the progress of the race. And you could see in these pictures maybe 100, 200 people standing around, like today people interested in an election would be standing.
The colorful figures that were involved in the sport were part of the appeal. Men like Sir Thomas Lipton, who tried to win the cup 5 times.
He made a name for himself, certainly, with his 5 Shamrocks, which raced in a period from 1899 to 1930. 5 times he tried, 5 times he lost. Sir Thomas Lipton grew on the American public. He was such a gracious person, a gracious loser, that everybody felt sorry for him. He was an underdog from the word go. To my knowledge, other than having him pose on a boat every once in a while, he never sailed on one of his Shamrocks. The New York Yacht Club, of course, was the trustee of the Cup all these years, and immediately they accepted a challenge. Some members would be canvassed to see whether or not they'd be interested in forming a syndicate.
Undaunted by his 2 previous losses to Harrasov boats, Lipton decided he would again challenge for the Cup in 1902. The call went out to build another Defender.
Now, the key players in the Reliance Shamrock III group were Oliver Iselin, Cornelius Vanderbilt, and William Rockefeller. And those names certainly denote money, and they were the ones, along with about a half a dozen other people, most of whom were bankers or very professional people, directors of firms such as U.S. Steel, companies of that nature.
In the fall of 1902, there was another challenge for the America's Cup, and the order was given about the 1st of November. We had already taken order for an 86-foot schooner and the class of Bar Harbor 31-footers, beside the usual number of steamers, so our shop was quite full.
Sir Thomas Lipton went to a shipbuilder in Scotland 5 times the size of Harrasov's for the construction of his Shamrock III.
The Shamrock III was built by Denny's in Dumbarton, Scotland. Denny's was one of the largest shipbuilding firms on the Clyde River. One of the things that they had in their shipyard was a towing tank, which was practically unheard of in those days. Harrasov did a lot of his work from hand-carving models and building a boat from the lines taken off his little hand-carved models.
Captain Nat's method of designing a hull was to hand-carve a miniature model from a single block of wood. The lines would be then taken off of the model for the full-size construction. Captain Nat carved the model for Reliance's hull in 2 nights, a much different approach than Shamrock III's designers, Fife and Watson.
The Fife-Watson combine used the test tank, which was the first time that a scientifically designed boat came out of the tank, that being Shamrock III.
The Reliance was a giant boat, 144 feet long. She had a rig that was 200 feet above the water, and with a 19-foot draft, her keel weighed 90 tons. And in that great yacht, which in reality was a sort of a giant scow, very, very fast, they also had the advantage of Captain Barr and a crew of 68. And that was, I think it's fair to say, the most spectacular of all America's Cup yachts then and now. He put in a most innovative rudder. This huge rudder, which was hollow, had, of course, a space inside for either air or water. So Captain Nat fitted a foot-driven air pump on the deck. If they wanted to modify the buoyancy of the rudder, somebody would, with his foot, pump up the air. The air would go in the top of the rudder, drive the water out, and it would, in effect, then help resist the weather helm. And of course, he used an interesting combination of metals. The bottom was made of bronze, and the plating was so skillfully laid out and built that all the plates came together in their butts so that the joint had practically no discontinuity. There was no putty or Bondo or anything on these hulls. And in fact, there was no paint on the bottom. They simply got a crew of 50 men to shine up the bottom before a race. So it must have been a beautiful sight, this gleaming bronze bottom. Then the top sides of Reliance were built of steel, and her deck was built of aluminum plating. And all of this, of course, to get strength with light weight. She had the largest sail plan ever placed on a single mast. She had 16,700 square feet of working sail, and that entailed, of course, a tremendous mainsail and a main topsail, which was itself so large that that main topsail alone had more sail area than the mainsail and jib of a 12-meter boat. The spinnaker by itself was more than 10,000 square feet, and to give a sense of the size of that, the spinnaker pole was 84 feet long.
This yacht was no doubt a pinnacle of achievement for John and Nat. The fact that such a relatively small company was able to produce a complex America's Cup Defender, plus a bevy of one-design boats and a schooner in one winter, while maintaining their high degree of craftsmanship, illustrates the refined working relationship John and Nat had achieved. They must have been very proud that spring of 1903 when Reliance sailed out of Bristol Harbor. As the two gladiators of the sea prepared for their duel, spectators from the world over gathered for the event. Sir Thomas Lipton and a few hundred of his closest friends camped out on his steam yacht Erin to view the event. Less fortunate spectators found space on excursion boats that lined the course. Speculation and tension rode high as the key players contemplated the results of the first meeting of the yachts. Could the Harrisov's Reliance possibly beat a boat that had been so scientifically designed in a test tank? In light winds, Reliance crossed the starting line ahead of Shamrock 3. Reliance's speed was soon evident as she methodically pulled ahead. Due to a dying wind, both skippers agreed to call the race off, but it was acknowledged that Reliance was the faster boat. It seemed that Shamrock's only hope was a superiority in heavy winds. The next race saw 16 knots of wind, and with it blew away Shamrock's hopes. Reliance won by 7.5 minutes. The crowds were now convinced of Reliance's superiority, but had to wait to confirm their beliefs. The next 4 races over 8 days were postponed due to either too much or too little wind. The feeling among Reliance's crew was, let's get it over with. In the final race, Reliance was ahead when she sailed into a fog bank. When she emerged from the other side, she had crossed the finish line and won the cup. When the fog lifted, Shamrock had sailed 5 miles off course and never finished the race.